Punching, kicking, weapons, and special moves keep fighting game fans on their toes while challenging themselves to reach the top. The excitement of racing your skills in these fast-paced chess matches is motivation enough to keep coming back for more. So why don't they attract a wider audience? Let's dig into the struggles facing the fighting game community and how they could escape this apparent frame trap. Street Fighter II took the world by storm back in 1991. It was such a large departure from Street Fighter I and the Double Dragon style of games that it seemed to catch everyone's attention. Once the concept of combos and special moves spread, the average gamer couldn't escape the shift in the industry. Magazines, books, even animation and movies followed the massive success seen on this new take on the genre. This unfortunately was noticed by one too many of producers, and a very large number of knockoffs, clones, and poorly polished titles were rushed to market. Even though the Me Too development was in full effect, a few titles managed to succeed with sequels and offshoots that are still around today. Perception of the fighting game genre was, however, tainted by more than just clones, generic characters, poor balance, and public oversaturation. The industry introduced the concept of updating titles with additional characters, backgrounds, balance changes, and new music, but sold them as a completely new title at full price. Fans still ate it right up. Localized tournaments were crude, but caused casual players to take notice. For some, just seeing expert gameplay was enough to open their eyes to the possibilities that await for those who practice. For others, the lure of single-player story or arcade modes was enough. This also famously led to the creation of the ESRB due to the mature violence found in some titles. The popularity of fighting games, in this case Mortal Kombat, was too much to ignore. Parents and news reporters unfamiliar with this side of entertainment saw it portrayed in a very negative light and wanted something done.
I know that one place parents want us to draw the line is with violence in video games.
The genre itself, as rewarding as it may be, can be very intimidating for a new player. Simply seeing an arcade game with that many buttons was rare enough. Defender was likely the only game that could compare at the time. The casual crowd's enjoyment is far shorter-lived too. The most they might enjoy is the aforementioned story mode or to button mash with a friend. The magic starts once they are shown how to perform a special move for a character they enjoy. The complexity ramps up quickly. Learning combos, positioning, and timing for your character are not enough. Any person who wants to excel will need to learn what every character can do in every situation. Executing a series of moves and combos need to become second nature via repeated practice. Later on, the gameplay will adapt to the point where it becomes somewhat similar to a chess game. Figuring out what your opponent might do while also staying unpredictable yourself is what fighting games are all about. Yet, this is where most companies that produce these titles have an issue with to this day. How do you incentivize a brand new player into wanting to get to this level? Having an excellent tutorial should be a bare minimum, and many recent titles have gotten better in this aspect. Perhaps some simple rewards could be tied to completing parts of the tutorial at various intervals. A developer will likely find greater success at showing some of what's possible in order to open the eyes of what one can do if dedicated enough. Trailers and character overviews can also be a step in the right direction. But there will always be customers who only want to mash and have a great time doing it. Some titles have experimented with auto combos as recently as Dragon Ball FighterZ or sold easy fatality tokens in Mortal Kombat X. Avoiding tight technical skill requirements can be a very tricky thing, however, because if done wrong, it might upset the hardcore fans. Adapting muscle memory and knowing what the technical aspects and jargon like frame data, footsies, and oki mean isn't for everyone either. Now, aside from avoiding becoming a niche gameplay style, the fighting game genre has suffered more recently from questionable business practices.
Don't make me laugh.
Capcom, who has historically been seen at the forefront of the success of the genre, has really been taken to task. Street Fighter IV was a huge success and seemed to grab the attention of a lot of players. Sales were going well and showed the audience wanted fighting games to come back full force. Unfortunately, their troubles seemed to start with Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Players complained how fast the Ultimate version was released, which added more to the game, and it turned out that it might have been pushed because of licensing issues. Disney had recently purchased Marvel, and Capcom was no longer going to be able to sell the game digitally after a certain date, putting the game's longevity into question. Street Fighter Cross Tekken ran into many issues during its shelf life. What should have been a celebrated game that blended these two powerhouses turned out to have such a poor reputation that it caused Namco to cancel Tekken vs. Street Fighter. At launch, most matches ended in a timeout due to damage scaling. The infamous gem system gained DLC that made it seem pain to win. The game had DLC on the disc locked behind a paywall, which all gamers loathe. The odd Pandora system that kills your own characters for a limited burst of power was not looked upon favorably. The PC version launched several patches behind their console counterparts and had questionable netcode. Console exclusive characters fanned the console war flames, and more. Many of these issues were eventually fixed, but the player base was already ruined. Street Fighter V held up slightly better, but still caused quite a rift in the FGC. Even though Dimps, the development house, was behind it, complaints about the visuals such as Ken's hair and rampant clipping issues were often repeated online. Much of the gameplay changes forced more guesswork and commitments with no recovery options, which some felt dumbed down the overall game. This leads to more canned sequences and less tech overall. On top of this, Capcom's decision to charge fairly high prices for nearly everything in the game, including stages, didn't appease fans. While it's true that a player can earn a number of things by playing a somewhat unrealistic amount of hours, not everything uses in-game currency. The game was also notably bare when it came to content compared to any other version of Street Fighter upon release. The switch to Unreal Engine 4 also seems to have added additional input lag that's unavoidable. Sony financially supported it, so the title is unavailable on Xbox game consoles. At the time, Microsoft didn't counteroffer as they wanted to stand behind their own IP, Killer Instinct. The newest title, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, was developed internally, and it shows. One of the most talked about issues came right from the advertising. What happened to Chun-Li's face? Several discussions surrounding the game's artwork popped up. Even the user interface didn't seem appealing to the audience, and it also used Unreal Engine 4. As Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 resurfaced in digital stores, people discussed the possibility of Disney interfering with character selection as part of a new licensing deal. Most notably, the exclusion of some of the most well-known characters in all of Marvel, the X-Men, was nowhere to be found. When pressured about this huge omission, Capcom claimed that the gameplay the X-Men used were represented by other characters. They stated that players only wanted them for that reason and watered them down to simple, and I quote, functions. An enormous amount of memes and backlash followed. The public has been made aware of Disney's intentional avoidance of the X-Men and Fantastic Four due to licensing, and some believe it might be why Quicksilver was killed in Avengers: Age of Ultron. That isn't to say other companies aren't without fault. SNK's King of Fighters 14 represented the first move to 3D graphics. Players understandably said it looked like a PlayStation 2 game with bland textures. NetherRealm Studios games often hears issues regarding animation, flow, and so on. Now there have been positive points that stand out, however. When we mention NetherRealm, there has been a distinct amount of praise regarding content at release. The story modes from both Mortal Kombat and Injustice titles have even made Yoshinori Ono, lead developer of Street Fighter, to admit his jealousy, which likely led to the much later addition of the story mode in Street Fighter V.
Killer Instinct.
Killer Instinct, while having its own issues with exclusivity, has been seen as basically doing almost everything right. Free character rotations, a great tutorial, fantastic netcode, and free mode expansions while also looking great add to it. Keeping its reputation of having one of the best game soundtracks in the genre's history while also appeasing nostalgic fans has helped to counter many of its downfalls. Console crossplay that works well is also a bonus. Now, if the Windows Store wasn't so problematic and marketing was pushed higher, who knows where it would be today? Today, the release of Dragon Ball FighterZ has received a huge amount of attention. Sure, some might chalk it up to fantastic IP that Arc System Works got their hands on, but it isn't that simple. Listening to feedback about the overwhelming complexity present in Guilty Gear and BlazBlue, DBFZ seems to strike a balance. New players can mash auto combos while enjoying all the color and flash of the fantastic graphics, and anime fans get to enjoy the highest rated Dragon Ball game in all of history. On PC, Dragon Ball FighterZ has broken records. As of this video, it has the highest concurrent player count of any fighting game in Steam history. Pleasing an audience, especially for competitive games, is always going to be a fickle thing. There are many points we chose not to cover today, and we aren't going to tackle the never-ending feud between Smash Bros. Fans and the rest of the FGC. I want to know, though, what you would like to see added in the future, and how would you go about fixing the genre that always seems to be struggling? What would cause a huge resurgence, the likes we've never seen since the 90s? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. This has been Jason at Curse signing off, and as always, enjoy the game, even if they only contain functions.